Is
charging,
that on?
right? Yeah, nope, it's not.
It is not.
There.
Let me go back to see if it went off the video or not. It did not. All right. Ready?
Yep. What's our intro?
I got the intro.
Okay.
Why, hello.
Hey there.
So this coming week, we have 2 saint feast days, 14th and 15th. The first is Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, which actually has a soft G sound in the native Mohawk language. And the other is Saint Swithun. Where do you think Saint Swithun hails from?
Wales.
Probably.
It
I don't know.
Sounds Welsh.
English.
Swithun.
Saint Swithun. Saint Swithun's Day. Crispin's Day. All of these weird saints of the Anglo-Saxon heritage. So I told you a little bit about Saint Swithun's big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So the one miracle that's attributed to him in his lifetime is actually probably a fable. It's about him meeting a woman whose eggs had been crushed by someone bumping her on the way to market, and she was going to go sell her eggs. And he prayed over her eggs, and they were all restored to their shells. Miracle. But it's likely to have never taken place because there was a lot of posthumous literature that he was involved in, but it was more than 100 years after his death. So likely never happened. The other thing that he is attributed to being involved in, I told you about, which is he's like Ponchatabi Phil. Ponsanabi Phil. Okay, how do you say it? Ponchatabi Phil?
Punxsutawney.
Punxsutawney.
Punxsutawney Phil.
Punxsutawney Phil?
Yes.
Okay, Punxsutawney Phil. He's the Punxsutawney Phil of the Anglo-Saxon peoples.
So they take him out of a tree hole and hold him up and see if he sees his shadow. Essentially,
as totally inaccurate. So apparently if it's sunny on his feast day, you get 40 days of sunshine. And if it's rainy on his feast day, you get 40 days of rain.
Okay.
So again, kind of funny. When I read that, I was like, it's their Groundhog's Day.
Probably a lot of rain they get from him.
Yeah, so, they've got a big feast that actually is accurately attributed to a saint versus we have Groundhog's Day, which is also Candlemas, from what I recall.
Oh, really?
I believe so. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny about Saint Swithun. I think his feast day is the 15th. And then the other one is Saint Kateri. And something I did not know about her is Kateri was her baptized name.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, why that's significant?
I don't, but
So have you heard a baptism name is you have to use a saint's name. At least prior to the 80s, I think. You had to be baptized under a saint's name.
She's 1880s or 1780s, isn't she?
Yeah, so why would she be baptized as Saint Kateri?
I have no idea.
She and I have something in common.
Catherine?
Yes.
Ah.
So it's the Mohawkanized form of Catherine. So she was actually christened as under Saint Catherine, and they just did the phonetic putting it into Mohawken. Probably it means something in Mohawken, or it uses the right structure of the vocalic structure in their language. Kind of like Japanese.
Yeah.
I think I'm kasarin in Japanese.
Something close to that.
Sarinsu? I don't know.
Sandasu.
Something like that. There's no way to put
Yeah.
Catherine into Japanese in actual Japanese, but you have to kind of change it around.
Yes.
So that's Saint Kateri.
So is it Kateri or Cat-teri?
It's in actual Mohawken, it's Gatiri. Gatiri.
Got like a G sound.
Yeah, there's no th at the end. Or no, that's not in Takawitha. Takawitha, I think it is. They have it in Wikipedia, more phonemic for the Mohawken language. But yeah,
I didn't know
that. Gatiri, I think, because they must not have a hard k at the beginning of a sound, like a name or a word. But it's Katiri, which is easier to relate back to Catherine.
All right, so the Mohawk people, they're not the Mohicans. That's a different group, right? Because there's the book, Last of the Mohicans, which I haven't read
I don't
yet.
know. Those are not Native Americans in Colorado,
No.
so I don't know anything about them.
No, they're not here at all. So.
I only learned about Colorado Native Americans in the 4th grade.
Oh, okay.
Which Native Americans did you learn about in the 4th grade?
I couldn't tell you. I remember I learned about pioneers and Indians and things like that
I think
in the
4th
grade
grade is like the big year to like learn about your state history and then learn about Native Americans. We also threw dinosaurs in there in 4th grade. But that was a carryover from the 3rd grade.
I don't know. Dinosaurs was a continuation through all of my elementary school time because that's all I wanted to know about. I didn't
That's
care
when
about anything
you
else.
sat up.
Yes. Well,
You're like listening.
I mean, pre-Jurassic Park, everything was kind of building to it, you know? Animatronics were starting to get there. You could, like, touch the weird rubbery skin things. You'd go and they'd have the sandboxes full, and you could, like, excavate bones and things like that at the mall.
Nice.
Yeah, we had stuff like that.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was fun.
Nice. Well, I'm Kit.
I'm Dale.
Welcome to Catholic Hitch. We are a Catholic family seeking heaven and hoping to pick up others along the way.
Small talk.
All right, so you had the week off.
Yeah.
Off, I say in air quotes.
Well,
you weren't paid.
I wasn't working in the sense of my profession, except for one evening meeting, which had to happen. So, but yeah, I decided I needed to take the time, or I was never going to get the time this year, just because we were super busy and there's a lot going on. So I bundled it with the 4th of July, because after camping, it's always hard to go back to work and try to get into gear literally the day after you've come back. And so rather than that, I decided, hey, why don't I get a bunch of the projects I've been having around the house done? And I don't think did I get anything off of your list? I don't think I really did. I think I got off my list of to-dos.
Well, you did a to-do for me this morning. It
Well,
wasn't on a list, per se.
That was an impromptu to-do.
I think No, you did.
What did I do?
You wire brushed the chair and then spray painted
Oh,
it.
true.
But that was an impromptu task again.
Yeah. Well, normally I keep your list pretty small and take care of maintaining that list, as to where my list, I think, gets a little bit longer and I ignore it. But my projects tend to be a little bit bigger. So
yeah, what did you do this week?
So the end of the saga for the truck fender, I went over, I think the day we got back from camping. Because,
yes. You didn't even take a shower. You're like, I'm going to get dirty with all this grease on this thing.
Well, so I had told the guys over at Fair Auto, hey, I'm going to come on Tuesday and pick it up. So I run down there, get the new old fender, swap it for the others. They were totally cool about it. Didn't charge me a thing. Came home and then basically sanded it, primed it, painted it, made it red on the inside and red in like where the inside of the door cab is, and then put it on. And I did learn, which I didn't tell you, that apparently the truck was from the factory white originally.
Oh my gosh, that's been painted?
Yeah.
They painted it?
Mm-hmm. Either that or the other truck that it came out of, which was the GMC, they put the whole cab in and didn't change the piece out.
Yeah.
One or the other. Or they did actually a pretty good job with painting it red. Could have gone either way.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because
Wow.
the undercoat's like a light gray, white color, traditionally when they prime and paint. So, yeah, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what red is it? Because there's like 6 different reds to choose from between Chevrolet and GMC. And I couldn't figure it out, so I just eyeballed it. And it's pretty close to the color it's supposed to be for, getting a duplicolor can. And
I don't think it needs to be super on point for the truck.
not on the inside, no. I mean, when I paint the outside, it'll all be consistent, whatever red I pick, which will probably be the red I use, because I think it looks pretty good.
Just thinking about I guess there are actually a lot of white trucks, but it feels like a really inappropriate color for a truck because a truck is a work vehicle.
Well, the reason you see a lot of white trucks, especially as work vehicles, is because white's the cheapest color. There's no tint in it. It's just white.
Oh.
So they're not paying as much when they make them. That's why a lot of fleet cars are white.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a cheaper car. Just
because
like
it looks bad quick.
yeah,
when
well,
you
it's
go
like
out
our
on a work
IKEA
site.
couch, right? Our IKEA couch came with white coverings.
Oh my gosh.
And if you wanted a color, that was an ad because you have to tint it, not just bleaching it white. So yeah, white typically is the cheap model of things.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was probably a fleet truck originally, which
So
is
fender.
fine. Yeah, got the fender done. And then a while back, I had decided to spend some, like $20, I think is what I ended up spending. Because we had points on a card, and I had a rebate and a coupon. And so I got all the parts to do the rear drums on the Camaro. And I forgot why they don't make rear drums anymore. They are so painful to fix. So there's like 15 parts inside that make the drum actually work, where the shoe, which is the round part that presses up against the drum to make the car stop. There's 4 different springs, and then there's an expansion piece at the bottom that allows the e-brake to engage.
Oh.
And then there's the brake cylinder, which pushes out the shoes. And I decided to replace the brake cylinder, and wouldn't you know it, apparently on a Camaro in the 82 to 92, they decided, well, we'll make some of them metric, and we'll make some of them SAE.
Why?
Yeah, right. So I got the American SAE version because it's a 1984 Camaro, and back then most of those they weren't metric just yet all the way. Well, nope, mine's metric.
Oh.
So I spent 45 minutes at least trying to get one of these brake cylinders on, made my hands just completely raw, and I finally gave up and realized that it didn't quite match the brake line that was supposed to go into it. Had to go 40 minutes away to get the brake cylinders I need, come back, then put them on. And Terrence was super trooper. He helped me through the whole thing. And I've learned, loves to use a wire wheel brush. So I didn't ask him to do it except for once, and then he just kind of went gung-ho on all the parts. Even the springs we weren't putting back on because I got new ones. Because, they get sprung a lot in your braking, so you don't want to put the old ones back on. He was wire brushing those by hand. He's like, I don't know why I keep doing this. It's just so satisfying. Like, yeah, you're my son. So that project, that took all of Wednesday. Literally all of Wednesday. Yeah. I was like, oh, this should be an hour or two. No, but I got done at 9:30. Yeah, by the time it was all complete and brakes bled and everything else to be done. And then, ironically, as I'm getting the project done,
it was Thursday.
Was that
actually,
Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of our neighbors, who's a car enthusiast, he stops by and he's like, hey.
He's your bud.
He is. He told me he has a 1984 Pontiac Firebird rear end that has positive traction and disc brakes. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to use it on my project. You want it on yours? Like, come on. I just finished the brakes on the rear end I have now, and here I find you have what I've been looking for. So, yeah, I might end up purchasing that from him and
redoing it
some years from now, redoing it. Yeah.
Oof.
Well, it'll be easier because it's disc brakes, but it's like all projects, they never end. So yeah, that was fun and ironic at the same time. Wasn't expecting that to happen.
It's a shame.
Right?
Too bad you didn't do the woodworking projects the first day.
Right.
Well, then he comes around and tells you about this disc brake thing.
Right.
Before you.
Yeah, because then I would have taken all the parts back, but oh well. Is what it is.
Yep.
So it was that Friday, Saturday? I don't know. It's vacation time, so I'm
was
all the
the
way
car,
off. Yeah.
And then Friday you switched gears to wood.
Yes. So the projects for the kids for the summer. So when we went camping, I took one log that was about the right size and I brought it home. because the firewood that you get has been sitting around for at least a year, one season, before you actually burn it, because you need to get the sap out of the wood. So it's perfect for using in a woodwork project because it's been sitting out and it's dried out for a long period of time naturally, so it doesn't crack as easily either. I decided, well, I got that lathe for free from, again, my buddy down the street helped me with the bequeathal.
To not be bashful.
Yeah, and so I went ahead and used that because with Terrence's project, I had to make these little wheels for the cup for a trebuchet, and I figured, well, I've got a lathe, I might as well just turn them myself. So while Terrence was doing all of the measurements and everything for the posts and the bars and all the things he needed, I went ahead and lathed the wheels and the cups for that.
I still haven't seen it, really.
It's downstairs. He's already used it and broken one of them, but that's okay. That's part of the learning process. I just decided I'm not going to do a drafting project for him on that. We did a drafting project. They learned how to orthographically draw, and I think that's good enough for now, because that project would be a bear for him to do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even Christina
Maybe one
at
part.
14, 13, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I just let him take a piece of wood, and he kind of marked it all out and said, okay, this is what I think I need. And then we went to the Home Depot and kind of measured everything out. I'm like, okay, I think you need this post or this dowel rod and this dowel rod, and got a couple of pieces, some hooks, and came back and I let him do all of his own drilling. I let him do his own cuts on the miter box saw, which you were a little apprehensive about.
Oh, yeah, I did not like seeing that.
Yeah.
No. I was happy not knowing that he was cutting with a powered tool like that. But I mean, it's safe, but for mamas to look at their sons next to like our huge blade, even with a guard.
Yeah,
I
I wouldn't let him use the table saw. I wouldn't let him use the wood lathe. Those are too dangerous. But the chop saw, made sure that I watched him as he was doing his cuts. His hands were nowhere in the danger zone. He was good. Made all of his cuts.
Yeah, table saws.
And I did let him set up to do the drill, and then I would assist him with the drilling aspect himself. But he would pull it down, and he put the bits in and everything. So he did a lot of the work himself. So I think he's pretty proud of it. But at the end of the day, he was getting pretty tired. So when it was time to glue, he went a little overboard on one of the trebuchets and glued even the pinion wheel to the dowel rod. So when they were using it this morning and they pulled the pinion back with the rubber band, it broke the dowel rod that it was on, just splintered it. And yeah, so I'm like, okay, we got to pull that out, because I was watching him like, Terrence, you putting
too
glue
much
there and there? And he's like, yeah. It's like, not there. That needs to freewheel so that it can work. He's like, oh. And he kind of wiped it off with his hand, wiped it on his pants, and he's like, it's good. And then put it together. I'm like, that's gonna glue. It's fine. They were work pants. It's fine. So he got that project done. Still have to do Christina and Jonathan's little robot project. Didn't touch that one at all. But Rosie, she got to use the scroll saw and cut out her spoons. And then she was sitting there with the sandpaper rolling it, and she got the spindle of the spoons done. They're all nice and smooth.
Nice.
Good size. Yep. So the next thing we'll do with that is we're going to use the Dremel tool and carve out the spoon portion. Then she can sand the rest, and she'll have her spoons done. She drew out her bunny on a big board, so I got to figure out how we're going to do that one. That one's a little bit more of a challenge.
Wide, because that's where those spoons get inserted into a hole or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's very cute.
Yep. But yeah, she enjoyed it. She was very intent on when she was pushing it through the scroll saw. And scroll saw is about the least dangerous tool you can use in a shop, because it's got a big guard on it, and it goes up and down, and it's pretty slow. So even if your hand touches the blade, it'll cut, but it won't like cut through or anything like that. So
that I'm less. Well, and Rosal, I don't know. She's just a very particular, careful, accurate of our children. She's just,
Yeah, she did
I could see her doing a really good job even at her age.
Yeah, she did a great job getting those all done. So I was very happy with the kids' work on that, and the lathe works amazing. It's really well made, and I figured out how the belts work, because it's not the most fancy lathe. I mean, it's not like a $3,000 lathe or something like that with a variable speed control on it that you just turn it up and down when you want. It doesn't have a face shield or anything like that. So I was covered in wood from head to toe.
Yep.
But I knew I had my safety glasses on. I had my hat on, so my head was protected, and yeah, it was good. It was a learning experience.
Yeah.
Made a what was that? Like a little rosary cup thing.
Mm-hmm. It was
like
cool.
The one you've got.
Yeah.
But not quite as cool, because yours has 2 compartments. This is just 1 compartment.
I could have gotten a 1 compartment one, but I thought I'll just go for the 2 compartment. It was the people from the Holy Land, the Christians.
Handicraft.
Yes.
Isn't it? Bethlehem.
Bethlehem, that's it.
Yeah.
So they make wood, ornamental, like wood out of olive wood, and then they sell it here in order to support their families. So they come by our parish like 3 times a year.
Yep.
So the last time I was debating between that aforementioned little holder, and it's actually like a spice holder, but I use it for rosaries.
Oh.
And I was also looking at a rolling pin, because we have gotten a lot of crucifixes from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that we have a room in our house that doesn't have a crucifix, at least 1 crucifix in it by now.
I
so
think
I thought we need
covered.
to find something else.
Yeah. And now
So-
technically I can make you
I
a rolling
know.
pin. You got to get the wood.
Cool.
Yeah, so you have to pick out some hardwood that will
Well,
work for that.
I don't know. I
Well,
guess
you
I'll
want
research
do you want it dark colored, or do you want it light colored?
I don't
That's really
care.
it.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever's cheaper.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Next project.
All right. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just thought about that. So yeah, because the lathe totally works. I will have to get some tools for it. So I learned that, which makes sense. The tools that came with it were pretty cheap. When you use a lathe tool, it's basically a blade, and as you push the blade in, you're dulling it over time.
Oh.
Because it's you grind the edge yourself, and unless you try to temper it, because when you grind it, you take the temper out of it, so it just dulls over time. So I had to sharpen it like 3-4 times.
Oh.
So I'm gonna look at. There's a nicer set at Harbor Freight. I'm gonna look at getting those eventually. Maybe that's a birthday present.
Maybe.
Because it just takes time to grind them back again, get them done. So I had to do that a couple of times. But otherwise, it works really well. And I learned how you mount 2 different ways. You mount with like 2 pin points to turn it, but then if you try to mount it to cut inside of it, it wobbles like crazy. So you have to basically get your block of wood all turned and roughly where you need it, cut an end, so that you can mount it to a flat plate. Like if you want to make a bowl or a cup or a rosary holder.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why it's like a lot smaller than when I started. It was like 4 inches in diameter. Now it's like 3 inches in diameter, because I had to cut it off.
It is small,
and
but
redo it.
man, it's great looking.
Yeah.
You
I
did a
think
good
it's going to
job.
work out. So
Yeah.
I'll get that one done at some point. Maybe today. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yep.
It's a busy day again.
Yeah. Big talk.
Big talk.
Maybe small big talk.
Yeah, it's going to be a shorter one. So something that I've been doing with our church is I've been doing a series of talks over the summer. Not super high attendance, but part of the objective with these talks was to kind of prepare some talks for the year. That was one on the restored order of the sacraments. I'm going to be essentially giving that talk again as a family night in like October to everyone, because there's just so much confusion about the restored order.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I did, and that we're going to talk about a little bit, I wanted to do an explainer about like why we have safe environment at churches, which is a rather dark subject. So as part of our faith formation in our diocese, any program that works with children, you have to do a variety of trainings. You have to train the volunteers, any adults that are going to be volunteering with the children or with vulnerable people. And then you're also supposed to be doing training with the children. And that is rather awkward for a program that people are bringing their kids to learn about God and Jesus and the sacraments, that suddenly we're talking about safe boundaries, safe touches, unsafe touches, safe adults, unsafe adults, special safe adults. You know, that takes people for a little bit of a loop.
I think it's something that adults, especially parents, we don't want to talk to our kids about it. We're afraid to, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And the purpose is to provide children with the vocabulary that they need to explain when a situation is going wrong. Like, so they can say, someone pushed past my boundaries and I got away. And it also really, really establishes that it's okay to say no to an adult. Well, so if an adult is pushing past your boundaries or making you feel unsafe, it tells you you can say no. And then it also, at the very end of this past year, we were talking about, you know, strategies to get out of, like, say you're just feeling uncomfortable, a teacher's called you to their office and they're making you feel weird, but you don't want to just run away and scream no down the hall. Like, it's just not going to be feasible. Yeah. We talk about excuses to get yourself out. That you can say that you're sick. That you can say, oh, I forgot I have to go home and, like, feed my turtle. I was like, you can invent a pet. How cool is that? Right. You've always wanted a snake. You can say you have to go take care of your snake. So it's about empowering children.
Yeah.
But it isn't something that people expect to suddenly come into your church
space and
think,
into church class. I need to have a conversation about this.
Yeah, and it definitely, as much advance warning as I gave to families last year, I had one, and we have opt-out forms because, unfortunately, what is empowering to a child, like to most children, I'd say, who have not experienced victimization, like, that is actually traumatizing to go through the same content if you've been the victim of predation.
Yes.
So anyway, it's an element of safe environment. And the way that I explained how safe environment is actually functioning, by the grace of God, I actually thought of something that I learned about in grad school, and you know a little bit about as well. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a nice metaphor, so I thought I would talk about it here.
Sure.
Rather than getting into any other details. So I have a master's in urban planning, and one of the, like, giants in the urban planning profession, she's not actually an urban planner, she's more of an urbanist and a neighborhood advocate. Her name is Jane Jacobs. So she's quite famous in some circles and otherwise is reasonably unknown to most of the population. Jane Jacobs is well known for this concept called eyes on the street. Do you remember what eyes on the street means?
Yeah, so, you know, back in the day before suburbs were everywhere and we all lived in suburbs, you had areas like Brooklyn or Philadelphia where people were in a dense urban area, and you had grandmas and moms that were just out and about throughout the day. You had dads that would come in off the night shift, off the evening shift, and everybody was hanging out outside, you know, on the fronts of their row houses.
On the stoops.
Yeah, on the stoops. At some point, I don't know, was it the 60s, I would say, the 40s, 50s, 60s, the shift towards suburban housing happened after World War II. But before that, everybody kind of watched everybody's kids. So you didn't have the predation problem that we have now. Like when we were kids, we both lived in the suburbs, and the first thing we had to learn about was, you know, stranger danger. If you're walking to school, how to walk to school, you know, don't go with traffic. You know, you have to have your whatever your password, you know, to know if somebody's picking you up, because we didn't have eyes on the street.
Yeah.
In the same way, everybody goes home, you're in your house, and nobody's in their front yard anymore. You don't do it, and especially now, air conditioning, you don't need to be out on the front porch.
Yeah.
You're climate controlled, and there's no reason to leave the inside of your house and get away from your television. You know, that's the change in our culture. But the eyes on the street was really, you know, all of these people used to be together, and when something went a little funny, they'd say, "Hey, who are you? I don't know you.
Yeah.
Why are you talking to Bobby over there?"
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference. So this program that you're working with, Safe Environment, is really about that idea.
Yeah.
Right?
it's a really great way of looking at how safe environment is functioning. And in my talk, I really emphasize that we can't pat ourselves on the back quite yet, that we've like eliminated all, problems, because sin still exists.
Oh yeah.
Like, we're not going to stop that with safe environment. But the one thing that safe environment does is it helps to eliminate shadows within which predators can operate.
Mm-hmm.
So you're training the volunteers, you're training the children, and you're kind of informing the parents as well through those efforts. You're training the program people to train others like myself. So you're trying to eliminate these opportunities for people to start grooming children in order to victimize them. And that thing, I think, is something that we've done well, is we've made it really difficult for children to be preyed upon. And Eyes on the Street is about people being really aware of what is happening in their community circles. So your neighborhood is a great example of that. If you know your neighbors, you know kind of people's patterns of life, you can quickly start to identify things that are going wrong. And that's something that we've been implementing on our street, because we all,
Yes.
we're all well connected in our neighborhood, and we all helped together to solve like a rather difficult situation that was not ideal. We did that through practicing Eyes on the Street. But you can also practice Eyes on the Street in any other kind of community network that you're involved in. And again, it's like through the Holy Spirit, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jane Jacobs articulated what is happening with safe environment.
Right.
Jane Jacobs identified that where people are habitually is going to be safer than where people are not. And so she was advocating that we need to think about the way that we're designing our community spaces and our in urban, how we're planning things as far as like mixed uses, and making sure that people are going to be places, through the day into the night.
Yeah.
And that was really great. But that is a great way also of articulating how safe environment is functioning,
Well,
if it's all functioning well.
It's a sociological study, right? I mean, that's what sociology is a study of people coming together and doing things together. That's the basics of sociology. It's how we interact with one another. So what Jane Jacobs was doing was really talking about that before it was really understood. So there were a couple other they weren't urban planners, but they had huge impacts on the urban environment because they were studying how people react with one another. And basically that's all we're doing. We're on a parish campus. There's lots of spaces, and we're all coming together. We just want to avoid that there is that dark alleyway, that somebody who has a sinful nature that they have an issue that they need help with, and here they are, we're giving them a place that they could potentially have that near occasion of sin, and we want to avoid that. That's the biggest part of it. And I think that it takes a while to do the training for it, but it's really, really eye-opening and important to help especially parents understand what are the dangers, even in your own church. Even in faith formation programs.
School.
School's a big one now.
Or sports community.
Right.
I think that could be a really dangerous place for children.
Yes.
If people are not informed.
Yeah, to not get into the details completely, but grooming, right, it's a big issue right now, because we're not only just seeing this like it used to be. You got to watch out for sports coach Joe. He's a little touchy, that kind of thing. We all knew about that kind of stuff when we were kids. It was something you heard about that would happen on occasion. Well, now in the schools, it's not that. It's a whole front of counselors that are trying to help these children in identifying themselves.
Yeah.
They're grooming these children to find out which ones are vulnerable in order to meet an agenda which they think is helpful for children, which it's not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as far as they're they're actually doing some grooming in schools.
It's predation.
I would say, like you said, and you did that long class. It's a long training class for the first one to go through as a volunteer. It's 3 hours.
It's worth it.
But you got off of that, and it was a virtual meeting for you, which was quite nice. They're not often virtual in our diocese, but you felt really empowered just as a dad.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh.
Well, now I know what to look out for, And now I know, okay, this is why it shouldn't just be me in a classroom if I'm teaching with other kids. Yeah, and it's not that I'm going to hurt these kids, but it's for the safety of them, that there are other adults, and then for the safety of myself, that if something were to go on in the classroom, there's another adult in the classroom as a witness to what happened.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons for that. Duplicity. No,
Duplicity.
It's not duplicity.
Isn't it?
That's duplicitous. That's like malicious intent. Coverage, I guess. We'll just use that word. I'm not thinking of the right word.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. But to have everyone trained, it does make it really difficult for someone to operate.
Yes.
And fall into that sin that they're tempted toward.
Yeah. Is it redundancy?
Maybe redundancy.
That's probably the closest.
Yeah.
That's more of an architectural term.
It makes actually it quite difficult to operate children's programs, especially if you have a lot of different classrooms, because you need to have at least 2 adults per classroom. So that means you are doubling your volunteer need, but there's a good reason for it. And, to have everyone informed, I think everyone who does any kind of volunteering at a church, regardless, should probably take safe environment. And now they're becoming more aware of the fact that it isn't just children that we need to protect. We also need to protect vulnerable adults. So people that are under someone's power or authority. Whenever there's a difference in power, there could be victimization. And that's like the whole McCarrick thing. He was victimizing adults.
Yes.
But that didn't mean that he was doing anything other than preying upon them and using his power. So that fortunately is coming into the light, and that's the whole point of safe environment, is to eliminate those shadows, to bring things into the light. And we're never going to stop sin. Jesus is the one that stops sin.
Yep.
So we can't be tempted to think like, we've done it, high fives all around.
No.
We just have to help work together like those eyes on the street to make it really difficult for someone to fall into sin, at least in the networks that we're attached to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah. If you got any thoughts on this or any other topics, drop us a line at catholichitch@gmail.com.
May the Lord guide and direct our journey.
Amen.
Nice. Ta-ta.